we as war veterans are against this 2030 agenda. We can't disrespect the voice of 90% of those who voted yes towards term limits. No, we can't allow that.
My fellow Sadzaitas, this right here is a reaction video.
It is clear to us that Mnangagwa is failed. He is not fit to run this country, and his time to go is now.
They are angry, and they mean business. They did not mince their words. They said in no uncertain terms that they want President Mnangagwa to step down forthwith.
We ask him to go peacefully. If he refuses to take heed of this advice, we have no option but to ask the people of Zimbabwe to deal with a rogue president in line with the constitution.
The situation in ZANU-PF is slowly reaching boiling point. This was clearly evident days ago during the burial of Justin Mpamanga, which was presided over by General Chiwenga at the Hiroseka. Two groups, one loyal to Mnangagwa and another loyal to Chiwenga, clashed. The one loyal to Mnangagwa was led by the ICT minister, Tatenda Mavetera. It's called the Young Women for ED. The one loyal to Chiwenga is called General Chiwenga Voluntary Supporters Association. These two groups had a musical clash. It felt like a Zim Danso Cup clash. Madedido versus Vira Dendi, or Mbida D versus Akonangale. The one loyal to ED burst into song singing Mupanduki Mupanduki Nguva ya Kwana Chiramwena, translated Traitor Traitor, your time is up, take cover. To which the Chiwenga-aligned group responded and sang, Sianai naye Chiwenga, mnomvengerei, sianai naye Chiwenga, reminiscent of the Zim Danso, sianai naye Tawanda, Bangwela, Wantawanda, Mambo ndi mambo. Zinenge ziri nyasha kusvika 45. Vanoti nemuzita baba apa ndo futi baba. Anyway, focus Staffy, focus. So, the ZANU-PF tensions are fast reaching boiling point, and I have in the past told you that when you see ZANU-PF factionalism spilling out into the public eye, then you know that something is about to give. But my key focus today is to help you understand the status, standing and influence of war veterans in ZANU-PF, but most importantly in Zimbabwean politics. Of what consequence and significance was the stance taken by war veterans a few days ago? Do these old madalas have the power to either directly remove ED or, at the very least, influence his removal? Where are they getting the confidence and boldness to directly confront and challenge Mnangagwa in such fashion? Are they working alone, or do they have a backing from a faction in ZANU-PF? Or are they working on behalf of elements within the Zimbabwean military establishment? I see that many are already celebrating these war vets, and understandably so, because many people just want to see the back of Emmerson Mnangagwa. But is this not a repeat of the 2017 fiasco in which the war veterans pretended to be apolitical and hoodwinked the whole nation into believing that that coup was about Team Zimbabwe? They immobilized people to march against Robert Mugabe under the pretext and guise of a fresh start, when in fact they were actually working for Mnangagwa's Lacoste faction. How authentic are these old madalas? Are we not falling right into the hand and plan of a faction in ZANU-PF? Well, fellow Sadzaitas, slay queens and bingers, socialites, papalites, wasnamalites, varikudyarais, nevasnamarites. Welcome to the special report. Now, before I start reacting on this video, let me first explain who this guy is and his status in ZANU-PF. We want to find out what gives him and his comrades the confidence and boldness to publicly challenge Emmerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa. a man who they all know is very ruthless. I mean, they don't call him the crocodile for nothing. So, this guy's name is Blessed Runesu Geza. Some call him Comrade Bombshell. He's a ZANU-PF Central Committee member. Remember, the Central Committee is the national executive of ZANU-PF. It is the highest decision-making body of ZANU-PF outside Congress. If you want to occupy a powerful position in ZANU-PF, you must be a Central Committee member. The influential Politburo is actually a cabinet of the Central Committee whose membership is selected from the Central Committee. Outside Congress, the Central Committee is the only organ of ZANU-PF which can legally amend that party's constitution. So you can see how powerful the Central Committee is. It is the only body of ZANU-PF where ED can't appoint members. All Central Committee members must be elected. And in case you didn't know, it was the Central Committee which fired Mugabe and replaced him with Mnangagwa as ZANU-PF president during the 2017 coup. So, Blessed Runesu Geza is not only a member of the War Veterans Association, he is also a member of the Central Committee, and that gives him a political clout. Now, my fellow Sazaitas, allow me to dig deeper so we can all better understand these issues. I want us to be on the same page. Trust me, you want to know this. Remember, we are trying to establish the influence of war veterans in ZANU-PF and, most importantly, in Zimbabwean politics. You see, in 2014, the chairperson of the War Veterans Association was this guy, Jabulani Sibanda. This was the period when Mnangagwa and Maimujuru were engaged in a vicious factional battle. At the time, Maimujuru was the vice president and Mnangagwa was the Minister of Justice. Maimujuru enjoyed the support of the War Veterans Chairman, Jabulani Sibanda, who famously said that Grace Mugabe was trying to do a bedroom coup. He blasted and boldly declared that leadership is not sexually transmitted. Remember, at the time, Grace Mugabe was doing a so-called interface rallies whose attendance was compulsory from all ZANU-PF members. She was moving around the country attacking and denigrating Vice President Joyce Mujuru. But Jabulani Sibanda, as the War Veterans Chairman, refused to attend Grace Mugabe's rallies, publicly criticizing her for attacking Vice President Mujuru. However, the mistake Sibanda made was that he didn't have the support of his national executive. The national executive was largely loyal to the Mnangagwa faction, but some were just bootlickers, blindly following Grace Mugabe under the mantra, Munwese kuna amai. So, the National Executive of the War Veterans Association, together with its Council of Elders, removed and expelled Jabulani Sibanda for criticizing Grace Mugabe. This meant that a new chairperson had to be elected. So in choosing the new chairperson of the War Veterans Association, guess what happened? This guy, Blessed Runesu Geza, was seconded by war veterans from Mashonaland West and other provinces to fill in the post of chairman. However, he later backed down and threw his weight behind a sworn Mnangagwa loyalist, Christopher Muchangwa, who eventually became the chairperson unopposed. The War Veterans Association had been fully captured by the Mnangagwa faction. So, all of this happened in 2014, and Muchangwa was the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time. Upon becoming War Veterans Chairman, Muchangwa was promoted to lead the newly created Ministry of War Veterans. For the first time in Zimbabwean history, the war veterans now had a cabinet ministry responsible for their welfare, and a key Mnangagwa ally, Christopher Muchangwa, was responsible for that ministry. This was a win for the Mnangagwa faction. ED vanga vachibata chi association chema war vets kuti G. Vanga vakuti ndakachibata kuti G, but andisikipa ini. You see, what made Mnangagwa different from Maimujuru was the fact that he didn't capture organs of the party, though he did try and failed, of course. ED actually captured institutions of the state. This is what enabled him to stage a coup against Mugabe. The G40 had the whole party firmly under its control, but Mnangagwa had almost all the key institutions of the state under his control. So Mugabe was not able to stop the coup from happening because he no longer controlled the state. ED vanga vachibata kuti G. Ama days acho vanga vakuzifila baba. Look at him standing here with Energy Mutodi with a cap written, "I am the boss. I run this town like Geza and Rihanna." Ironically, Energy Mutodi is the guy who drafted the motion to extend Mnangagwa's term beyond 2028. But to be honest, I really don't think it's Mutodi who drafted it. However, it's got his name on it. Anyway, back to the story. So, we have established that ED captured the War Veterans Association in 2014. But why was it important for Mnangagwa to control the War Veterans Association? Well, you see, war veterans are political commissars of ZANU-PF. And for the benefit of those who don't know, a political commissar is responsible for organizing and providing political education to the masses, the people, the electorate. And this political education is not always done in a civil manner. Sometimes it's done violently. That's why the rural people are threatened with violence if they don't vote for ZANU-PF. They are constantly reminded that a win for the opposition will plunge Zimbabwe into another Wondoye Chimurenga. The rural people are taught that voting for the opposition makes one a sellout, a chimbwasungata, a mtengesi, a snitch. And you know what they say about snitches, don't you? They say snitches get stitches. And that's exactly what happens to the rural folks under the pretext of political education. And the so-called education is mostly done by war veterans in conjunction with the party's cell, district and provincial leadership under the direct supervision of the party's national political commissar, who is the chief organizer of the party. So during elections, war veterans are unleashed in rural constituencies to make sure ZANU-PF wins by any means necessary. Remember, they believe that the end justifies the means. Anyway, 2 years after taking over as chairperson of the war veterans, Mutsvangwa was fired from government and expelled from ZANU-PF for criticizing senior party and government officials. At one point, Jonathan Moyo said Mutsvangwa wants to play the role of John Rambo decades after the end of the armed struggle. Anyway, after getting fired from government and expelled from ZANU-PF, Mutsvangwa remained chairperson of the war veterans despite many attempts by the government to force him to resign. No Congress was held to replace Mutsvangwa, though one was later planned for December 2017, but was of course overtaken by events. So essentially, Mutsvangwa was pretty much retained the loyalty of most senior members in the War Veterans Association. That tells you that these Madalas were united around a cause bigger than themselves. What was the cause? The cause was the removal of Robert Mugabe, replacing him with Mnangagwa. And true to this cause, the Mutsvangwa-led war veterans were very instrumental in the removal of Mugabe, and in fact, Mutsvangwa was the public relations manager of the army during the 2017 coup. And if you look closely and carefully at this press conference held in 2017, you can clearly see Blessed Geza there. This was in 2017 during the coup. But now that we are all on the same page, let's now tune in and listen to Blessed Geza and let's react to this video.
The majority of black Zimbabweans remain poor, jobless and without real freedom. As a few black leaders have assumed the first character and elements of the very beast we fought against in the 1970s War of Liberation. The press conference is being held with the aim of mapping a way forward and addressing these imbalances, which for long have been neglected or ignored. In particular, it's a special message to Emmerson Mnangagwa, a nationalist who in 27 was brought to power through the help and support of all veterans and the general population of Zimbabwe via Operation Restore Legacy. In general, we also address corrupt gangsters and hangers-on who surround him and abuse national resources for selfish reasons. This man and those around him have failed us. He have failed all Zimbabweans who believed that the events of 2017 would bring an end to despotism, corruption, and privatization of the nation and its people. He is now nearly 10 years in power, but corruption, cronyism, and nepotism have escalated under his rule to extents never seen before in this country.
Now, the key takeaways so far, Geza mentions 4 things. Number 1, he says that the majority of Zimbabweans remain poor and jobless, and they don't have a real freedom. Number 2, he says that the current government is oppressive, just like the Smith regime, which they fought against. Number 3, he says that this press conference is directed at President Mnangagwa, who they say was brought to power through the help and support of war veterans. Number 4, he mentions the issue of corruption, and he says it so passionately, almost in the manner and fashion in which Vice President Chiwenga has been speaking against corruption. And in case you didn't know, Chiwenga has declared war against corruption. In fact, he's probably the only person in Mnangagwa's government who speaks frequently and passionately against corruption. He has also spoken out against this Mbingaism syndrome, which has taken Zimbabwe by storm. So I ask the question, is it a coincidence that Geza and his comrades are singing from the same hymn book as VP Chiwenga? In fact, it's not just the same hymn book, they are literally singing the same song. What I just don't know is who is singing soprano, who is singing alto, and who is singing bass, and who is the lead vocalist. Well, obviously in this case, Chiwenga would be the lead vocalist.
Emerson Mnangagwa, on assumption of power, he showed that he was a man who had learned nothing and forgotten nothing. He forgot the roots of his power on day one, and instead of correcting the mistakes of former President Robert Mugabe, he instead went about to prove to all of us that Mugabe was actually a saint. He deliberately sidelined the very people who fought on his side, and instead embraced the thieves, conmen, and heartless killers in his government. He systematically targeted pledged war veterans who stood for social justice in various arms of government and replaced them with crooks. This is very evident in his cabinet, which is now staffed with non-performing and deceitful ministers. It's no secret that they were picked because they either belong to his clan or are benefactors to his family through his children. War veterans were sidelined, and the majority of them are now destitute and beggars. It is mere coincidence that at a time our peers were being removed from influential positions in government, the army, and security sector, we witnessed an increase in the days of army generals. We wonder. We were and are still worried about these dates, which we believe are linked to Mnangagwa's blue-eyed boy, Owen Muda, who was once Minister of State Security. Mnangagwa who sought to protect the Constitution, he has failed to protect it. He has violated it left, right, and center for personal gain, and with the desire to entrench one center of power from party to country.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's getting hot in here. Someone please turn the aircon on. Oh, hakuna magets. My one. Anyway, Geza alleges that war veterans have been removed from influential positions and replaced with Mnangagwa's cronies. He even alleges that the military generals are being assassinated by someone who he calls Mnangagwa's blue-eyed boy, Owen Muda, the former state security minister. He says that all this is being done to remove any form of opposition to Mnangagwa's plans and to create one center of power, reminiscent of the Mugabe one center of power, which was adopted after the 2014 Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, zvinhu zvakadai hazvitaurwe nemunhu asina paakamira. Some of us are students of history. You see, history has one big weakness. It tends to repeat itself. Geza here is saying that ED has forgotten the roots of his power. He alleges that ED is neglecting the people who put him in office and is instead preferring to dine with thieves. Geza says that ED has surrounded himself with thieves and conmen and heartless killers, criminals surrounding the president. Do these words ring a bell to anyone? Remember what happened to Robert Mugabe. The army said, "We are targeting criminals surrounding the president." Of course, we all know that that was just a ploy to sanitize their coup, to make it look like it wasn't a coup and not a coup. But the point is, Geza is saying that ED is forgetting the roots of his power and neglecting those who put him in office. Is he just talking about war veterans? Are the war veterans the only people who put Mnangagwa where he is? Wasn't it the army that led the way and made it possible for the war veterans to then call on the people to march? Wasn't the job done by the time people marched? When Geza says the roots of ED's power, is he just limiting that to his constituency of war veterans, or does that also include the military? Does that also include General Chiwenga? No, it's just a question. I'm just simply asking a rhetoric question. We are not done here. Let's keep listening.
We were and are still worried about these deaths, which we believe are linked to Mnangagwa's blue-eyed boy, Owen Muda, who was once Minister of State Security. Right. Mnangagwa who sought to protect the Constitution. He has failed to protect it. He has violated it left, right, and center for personal gain, and with the desire to entrench one center of power from party to country. These maneuvers must be resisted by all right-thinking Zimbabweans. On the day he took power from Mugabe, he declared that the voice of the people is the voice of God. Yet at every turn, he has violated the voice of the people. In 2023, the people voted. Yet after their vote, he disregarded their voice and teamed up with that charlatan called Sengezo Shabangu to recall legitimate representatives of the people to replace them with his own stooges. This must be stopped. We know that the Speaker of the House of Assembly, Jacob Mutenda, supported this constitutional violation because he had been promised the vice presidency.
Now, to be on the side of the people, Geza condemns the Chabangu recalls and alleges that the Speaker of Parliament, Jacob Mutenda, was promised the vice presidency by Mnangagwa for siding with Chabangu and destroying the opposition in Parliament. Now, I hope you all know that if Mutenda becomes a vice president, it automatically means that Chiwenga must get fired, because the VP position held by Mohadi is generally reserved for former ZANU-PF cadres. I say generally because it's not in writing. It's just a traditional practice since 1987 when the Unity Accord was signed. So since Mutenda is not former ZANU-PF, the only way he can become VP is for Chiwenga to get fired. I hope you see the sequence here. First, Geza says that war veterans are worried about many of their colleagues who have been removed from influential government positions, with some generals getting assassinated. And now, Geza is hinting that there are plans to fire Vice President Chiwenga, who obviously played a very key role in making ED president. Do you see the connection between these war veterans and the Chiwenga faction? And if their allegations are true, to say that there are plans to elevate Mudenda to the vice presidency, which will inevitably mean the firing of Chiwenga, my question is, can Mnangagwa really get away with that? Firing his vice president. Remember what triggered the coup. It was the firing of Vice President Mnangagwa. But the question is, does Chiwenga have as much influence over the army as ED did under Mugabe?
This is not the Zimbabwe we envisioned when we took up arms. We understand that Mnangagwa does not feel the pain of all veterans because he's not one himself. He was invited to the struggle by his in-laws after staying in Zambia for nearly 11 years following his release from prison. He is a beneficiary of nepotism. Saka 11 years this is garage.
Isn't it funny that every time ZANU-PF members want to remove their president, they accuse the said president of being not revolutionary enough, not being ideological enough, not being a war veteran enough? They did the same to Ndabaningi Stole in 1975. They said he wasn't a revolutionary. They did the same to Mugabe in 2017. They said he wasn't a revolutionary. They said all he did throughout the war was make flowery speeches. Now they are doing the same to Mnangagwa. They are saying he's not a war veteran. But in 2017 they paraded, celebrated and glorified him like a deputy Jesus, while he's denigrating and soiling Mugabe's contribution in liberating Zimbabwe. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what you're watching is the escalation of ZANU-PF factionalism. Paper 2 year 2017 is on the cards. If you're not careful, muchaitiswa foot. Yes, granted, all freedom-loving progressive Zimbabweans don't want a Mnangagwa third term. That's a given. However, you must understand that it's not only people outside ZANU-PF who are against Mnangagwa's third term. It's not only members of the opposition or what's left of it who are against Mnangagwa's term limit extension. There are some in ZANU-PF who are also against Mnangagwa's term limit extension. If you are not careful, you will fall right into the plan of some of those in ZANU-PF who seek popular support to stop ED so that vapindeo vawane mukana wekudla. They want their turn to eat. The war veterans in 2017 said that they were apolitical. They said all the right things and invited members of the opposition to participate in a march against Mugabe. Little did the opposition know that it was falling right into the hands and plan of the Lacoste faction of ZANU-PF. Similarly, Geza and his comrades are saying all the right things, except they are only apportioning the blame on Mnangagwa and, as a consequence, exonerating everyone else who is not close to ED. That is not the correct position as far as the Zimbabwean political crisis is concerned. The end goal must never be to replace one faction of ZANU-PF with another. If you think Mnangagwa is the only problem, then you have a problem yourself. Because the problems of Zimbabwe are systemic. Mnangagwa is one big piece of an extremely big Zimbabwean problem. Of course, it doesn't help that his middle name, Dambudzo, is also translated a problem. But removing Mnangagwa and replacing him with another ZANU-PF factional leader is not the answer. I hate to disappoint those who are glorifying Chiwenga because of his recent stance on corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, rino nyenga rino warara rino zosumza msoro rawana. Look at what happened in 2017. Mnangagwa was saying all the right things. I am soft as wool. I am a listening president. Zimbabwe is open for business. For a while, he even banned the Pasne Chakadero, Pasna Ningi slogans. He also said he would step down at the end of his 2 terms. Yet, here we are. Ladies and gentlemen, Chiwenga is not the answer. The answer is getting the military to stay away from politics. For as long as the Zimbabwean military remains a stakeholder in our politics, then we ain't going nowhere. I hope one day all Zimbabweans will understand this point, that there will never be free and fair elections in Zimbabwe for as long as the military is involved in our politics. The military establishment is the single biggest threat to a democratic transition in Zimbabwe. And they don't even hide it too. That's the thing. This is not an analysis, it's a statement of fact. The military has said it in no uncertain terms that ZANU-PF ichatonga kusvika madhongi amera nyanga. Even in ZANU-PF itself, the military has been involved in all the major leadership changes in that party. What we should be worried about as a nation is how do we return the military to the barracks? How do we disband ZANLA because ZANLA is still in charge? For those of you who might not know, ZANLA was the ZANU army during the armed struggle. So it was initially created to be subservient to politics, not the other way around. The founding ethos of ZANLA was that the politics would always lead the gun. And initially, this was true until 1973 when Tongogara was elected into the Darere Chimurenga for the first time. From then onwards, the politics were no longer leading the gun. By 1975, ZANLA had removed the first president of ZANU and replaced him with Mugabe. And fast forward to 2017, Mugabe himself was removed by ZANLA and replaced with ED. Of course, there are elements of ZIPRA in the military, but essentially, chinhu ZANLA ichi. That is what needs to be corrected. Let's have a professional army that is not aligned to any political party. But for that to happen, an initiative must be taken. You are joking if you think that electoral reforms are the answer. It means you don't understand Zimbabwean politics. The problem is not the law. The problem is compliance. The current laws don't permit army generals to make political statements, yet they still do it anyway. Why? Lack of compliance. They don't respect the constitution. And you want to add more laws through your electoral reforms? What makes you think that they will respect the new laws when they don't respect the existing ones? Once again, electoral reforms are not the answer. I've already proposed one answer which I believe could provide a lasting solution. The question is, how do we get to it? That must be the debate. And I hope we are all clear that ZANU-PF as a system is bigger than ED, just like it was bigger than Mugabe. If you remove ED today, another one of the same kind will take over. It's a systemic problem. We must learn from our 2017 mistake. Don't participate in the ZANU-PF factional fights unless if you're a ZANU-PF member. We want a lasting solution to our problems, not a temporary fix. As always, thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoy the content, please do like and share.
One